Hello and welcome to my review of the Trump and Harris 2024 debate. I'm Gozifly and I have lived in the US for several years, and I'm very fond of the US and all the things that I got to know there, my friends. I've been working there for some time, studying and so on. And unfortunately, right now I'm not in the US, so I couldn't watch this live on television or broadcast it. So I have to react now. I wasn't spoiled. The only thing that I saw were like two small clips out of context, so I will not comment on them right now, but we'll go through each and every point during my review of this discussion. I'm happy that ABC News was able to get those two candidates together to debate, and we are watching the footage on the Wall Street Journal channel, so they recorded the whole debate. This might be split into several parts because with my comments it might be fairly long, and I hope I don't offend anybody with my opinions. I just want to go through everything with some logic. I will not claim to understand the American system entirely, or that a particular political view is completely out of whack or is good or bad, but we will go through each and every point that any candidate is making, and I hope they add some details to their points. If they don't, I will comment on that. So without further ado, let's get right into it. I'm looking forward to this election. I will also post a few videos about the election from now on, because I'm very interested in how it will proceed in the end. So I hope on election day we will be able to follow a great election, that democracy wins, and that it will be a great vote for this nation and the whole world. I'm not much known for reactions, but I hope this will change. I want to react to a couple of things from now on, and I will do those reactions in English. So if I make some mistakes, I hope you're fine with that, because I'm not the national English speaker. But as I said, I've lived in the US for a couple of years, so I hope those reactions will be fun for you, and I hope I can improve my English skills as well. So let's get right into it. We'll start the video now. So this starts about 6 minutes in. Sorry that I already stopped. It looks like Trump has won the coin toss, and he will have the final word or the final comments on everything. So let's see.
Harris and President Donald Trump.
Kamala Harris. Let's have a good debate.
Nice to see you. Have fun.
Thank you.
Have fun. Okay. But he's relaxed. She's relaxed. Let's see what happens.
Welcome to you both. It's wonderful to have you. It's an honor to have you both here tonight.
Good evening. We are looking forward to a spirited and thoughtful debate.
So let's get started. I want to begin tonight with the issue that voters repeatedly say is their number one issue, and that is the economy and the cost of living in this country. Vice President Harris, you and President Trump were elected 4 years ago, and your opponent on the stage here tonight often asks his supporters, are you better off than you were 4 years ago? When it comes to the economy, do you believe Americans are better off than they were 4 years ago?
So I was raised as a middle-class kid, and I am actually the only person on this stage who has a plan that is about lifting up the middle class and working people of America. I believe in the ambition, the aspirations, the dreams of the American people. And that is why I imagine and have actually a plan to build what I call an opportunity economy. Because here's the thing. We know that we have a shortage of homes and housing, and the cost of housing is too expensive for far too many people. We know that young families need support to raise their children, and I intend on extending a tax cut for those families of $6,000, which is the largest child tax credit that we have given in a long time.
I feel these are good points, but she really doesn't answer the question right now. I would have probably given an introduction like, I know that people are not better off than 4 years ago, but there have been many incidents that have contributed to this nation's or worldwide decline in economy and everything. And this is how we tackle it right now. These are my points. But anyhow, let's continue.
so that those young families can afford to buy a crib, buy a car seat, buy clothes for their children. My passion, one of them, is small businesses. My mother raised my sister and me, but there was a woman who helped raise us. We call her our second mother. She was a small business owner. I love our small businesses. My plan is to give a $50,000 tax deduction to start-up small businesses, knowing they are part of the backbone of America's economy. My opponent, on the other hand, his plan is to do what he has done before, which is to provide a tax cut for billionaires and big corporations, which will result in $5 trillion to America's deficit. My opponent has a plan that I call the Trump's sales tax, which would be a 20% tax on everyday goods that you rely on to get through the month. Economists have said that that Trump sales tax would actually result for middle-class families in about $4,000 more a year because of his policies and his ideas about what should be the backs of middle-class people paying for tax cuts for billionaires.
What I find interesting is, apart from the points that she's making against Trump right now, that he's so staying so calm. Let's see how that goes on. But he seems to be briefed, he seems to be prepared, and I'm wondering what he has to say. Anyhow, and I wonder what kind of questions will come after this comment, or if they switch over to Trump immediately.
President Trump, I'll give you 2 minutes.
First of all, I have no sales tax. That's an incorrect statement. She knows that. We're doing tariffs on other countries. Other countries are going to finally, after 75 years, pay us back for all that we've done for the world. And the tariff will be substantial in some cases. I took in billions and billions of dollars, as you know, from China. In fact, they never took the tariff off because there was so much money they can't. It would.
The question is, a tariff and taxes, are they talking about the same thing? Are those different things? Where's the proof? Is there any written word about this? So that's what I'm wondering sometimes. Do they have an official place where they post their plans and everything, or is this just what they're saying? And these tariffs actually, in my opinion, have influenced the market negatively because they were given one-on-one to the customer. So China products become more expensive, but we have to rely on China products. So they are imported. There's no real other product of a similar kind. So there's no replacement for those incoming products. So there's no preparation for this tariff, so that we can avoid it. So you know what I mean? So if they would have provided a business with the opportunity to make similar products in the US, and then we don't rely on those China products, this tariff would have been much more effective. And now we rely on those products and we have to buy them and we pay more money because China gets taxed or tariffed more to import those things, right?
Totally destroy everything that they've set out to do. They're taking in billions of dollars from China and other places. They've left the tariffs on. When I had it, I had tariffs, and yet I had no inflation. Look.
No inflation is incorrect, I would say, because I don't know the data exactly from the top of my head, but 3 to 5% was the inflation during those years, and this is kind of normal for that time. Also, later with COVID, everything got more complicated, right? So the inflation rose.
We've had a terrible economy because inflation which is really known as a country buster. It breaks up countries. We have inflation like very few people have ever seen before, probably the worst in our nation's history. We were at 21%, but that's being generous because many things are 50, 60, 70, and 80% higher than they were just a few years ago.
Isn't there like a package? So there are 100 goods or there are 100 things that everybody needs, and they make this inflation factor. So if housing gets more expensive, of course it affects the inflation. If some groceries get more expensive, it affects the inflation. But also computers take a part in it, for example. I don't know how they do it in the US, but isn't inflation based on those calculations?
This has been a disaster for people, for the middle class, but for every class. On top of that, we have millions of people pouring into our country from prisons and jails, from mental institutions. And
so what does this have to do with the inflation? And why are they criminals? So that's what I'm always thinking when he's talking about people coming into this country. But let's let him talk first.
insane asylums, and they're coming in and they're taking jobs that are occupied right now by African Americans and Hispanics, and also unions. Unions are going to be affected very soon. And you see what's happening. You see what's happening with.
Isn't the union there to protect people and to give guidelines? So I don't think anybody can come in and just take the job. And also, if somebody's employed and he's doing a good job, why should he be replaced by somebody else who's just coming in? And what I think is he's maybe, that's my assumption, mixing up the asylum word. Asylum can be a health institution, but seeking asylum is something completely different. And they don't have to be mad or crazy people to seek asylum. They might just be people of a religion or a group that is kind of endangered in their own country, and then they seek asylum to be safe in the US, for example, or they're poor and they have relatives here and they seek asylum. I don't know how it works, but it doesn't have to be crazy people.
Towns throughout the United States. You look at Springfield, Ohio. You look at Aurora in Colorado. They are taking over the towns. They're taking over buildings. They're going in violently. These are the people that Xi and Biden led into our country, and they're destroying our country. They're dangerous. They're at the highest level of criminality, and we have to get them out. We have to get them out fast. I created one of the greatest economies in the history of our country. I'll do it again and even better.
He created the best economy. Wasn't COVID a big problem in terms of the economy? I mean, I don't know if it was already under his rule that or his presidential era that it took all in effect, but actually everything declined, right? Because of COVID and everything. But I don't know. That's things that I'm not completely knowledgeable about right now, but this is my impression. And about this incidents at the high schools or whatever examples he mentions, are those things that are reported in the news? And he says everybody is like that? I don't know. Maybe it's just one incident that was reported.
We're going to get to immigration and border security during this debate, but I would like to let Vice President Harris respond on the economy here.
Well, I would love to. Let's talk about what Donald Trump left us. Donald Trump left us the worst unemployment since the Great Depression. Donald Trump left us the worst public health epidemic in a century. Donald Trump left us the worst attack on our democracy since the Civil War. And what we have done is clean up Donald Trump's mess. What we have done and what I intend to do is build on what we know are the aspirations and the hopes of the American people. But I'm going to tell you all in this debate tonight, you're going to hear from the same old tired playbook, a bunch of lies, grievances, and name-calling.
She's probably right, but I don't think this is a good strategy to spill that out right now. I mean, probably there are viewers that are undecided, but I think many people already set in the Republican or in the Democrat camp, or they believe in something that either candidate is pursuing or saying about the economy, independent of fact-checking and everything. So I don't know if that's a good strategy. I just wanted to say, and let's see what she says about the economy. What I find good about her points is that it's true what she's saying. He left all that. She doesn't go into detail. So let's see.
What you're going to hear tonight is a detailed and dangerous plan called Project 2025 that the former president intends on implementing if he were elected again. I believe very strongly that the American people want a president who understands the importance of bringing us together, knowing we have so much more in common than what separates us, and I pledge to you to be a president for all Americans.
President Trump, will give you a minute here to respond.
Number one, I have nothing to do, as you know, and as she knows better than anyone, I have nothing to do with Project 2025. That's out there. I haven't read it. I don't want to read it.
I mean, to me, it was so that this is the Republican program for next year, but maybe I'm mistaken. So I'm just wondering, why is everybody citing it, and then it's not his, and he hasn't even read it, so I don't know.
Purposely, I'm not going to read it. This was a group of people that got together. They came up with some ideas, I guess some good, some bad. but it makes no difference. I have nothing to do. Everybody knows I'm an open book. Everybody knows what I'm going to do. Cut taxes very substantially.
But how?
And create a great economy like I did before. We had the greatest.
Where does the money come from to cut the taxes? How do you want to cut taxes without affecting other things like social security or other things? So you have to cut down on something to cut the taxes.
Economy, we got hit with a pandemic, and the pandemic was not since 1917, where 100 million people died, has there been anything like it. We did a phenomenal job with the pandemic. We handed them over a country where the economy and where the stock market was higher than it was before the pandemic came in. Nobody's ever seen anything like it. We made ventilators for the entire world. We got gowns, we got masks, we did things that nobody thought possible.
They made ventilators for the entire world. I just know that Europe was kind of independent on that, and that also in Asia they didn't have any American masks or ventilators running. They had a big problem in some countries to get ventilators or spaces in hospitals, and that also includes parts of the US, but they did a good job in the end, so they provided, so the effect was less compared to other countries. That's true.
And people give me credit for rebuilding the military. They give me credit for a lot of things, but not enough credit for the great job we did with the pandemic. But the only jobs they got were bounce back jobs. These were jobs bounce back, and it bounced back and it went to their benefit. But I was the one that created them. They know it, and so does everybody else.
Vice President Harris, I'll let you respond.
So Donald Trump has no plan for you. And when you look at his economic plan, it's all about tax breaks for the richest people. I am offering what I describe as an opportunity economy, and the best economists in our country, if not the world, have reviewed our relative plans for the future of America. What Goldman Sachs has said is that Donald Trump's plan would make the economy worse, mine would strengthen the economy. What the Wharton School has said is Donald Trump's plan would actually explode the deficit. 16 Nobel laureates have described his economic plan as something that would increase inflation and by the middle of next year would invite a recession. You just have to look at where we are and where we stand on the issues. And I'd invite you to know that Donald Trump actually has no plan for you because he is more interested in defending himself than he is in looking out for you.
That's one thing, or two things. So I think she has a point altogether. She's more reflected and thinking about the future right now, I think, compared to his mentioned comments. So it seems like he doesn't have a plan, or he's not entirely sure. I mean, from this few talks, I don't know if you can just say that, but it makes the impression that he wants to be elected at all costs, but maybe he's not aware of the consequences of some of his points, and we don't know the details. How does he want to cut the taxes down? How does he want to increase economic growth? And she is also not giving a lot of detail, but she's giving more insights into what her plan exactly might be, and that she has a program going on, but we'll see in the end who's right. After all, it's political, so we don't know if we can take their word for it.
It's just a soundbite. They gave her that to say. Look, I went to the Wharton School of Finance, and many of those professors, the top professors, think my plan is a brilliant plan. It's a great plan. It's a plan that's going to bring up our worth, our value as a country. It's going to make people want to be able to go and work and create jobs and create a lot of good, solid money for our country. And just to finish off.
But in which brand, what kind of jobs? And he's always using superlative words, and he's repeating a lot, and the best and so on. But you guys know already, because you know Trump's speeches from 16 throughout the 2020 and also a couple of months ago when he restarted his campaign.
She doesn't have a plan. She copied Biden's plan, and it's like 4 sentences. Like run, spot, run.
But the other thing is, how does he know Biden's plan? He didn't read the 2025, whatever plan that was. He did he read Biden's plan? Did he read her plan? I don't know. I don't think so. And do his advisors give him the details about everything? I hope so, but I don't know if he knows them.
4 sentences that are just, oh, we'll try and lower taxes. She doesn't have a plan. Take a look at her plan. She doesn't have a plan.
Mr. President, I do want to drill down on something you both brought up. The Vice President brought up your tariffs. You responded, and let's drill down on this, because your plan is what she calls is essentially a national sales tax. Your proposal calls for tariffs, as you pointed out here, on foreign imports across the board. You recently said that you might double your plan, imposing tariffs up to 20% on goods coming into this country. As you know, many economists say that with tariffs at that level, costs are then passed on to the consumer. Vice President Harris has argued it'll mean higher prices on gas, food, clothing, medication, arguing it costs the typical family nearly $4,000 a year. Do you believe Americans can afford higher prices because of tariffs?
They're not going to have higher prices. What's going to have and who's going to have higher prices is China and all of the countries that have been ripping us off for years.
Who are the countries who are ripping you off, and what specific brands or industries are you targeting, and what is the alternative? Are there alternative products? Is there a bringing up of a kind of Americanized version of those products so that the tariffs don't kick in with the people? I think it's the same as the China tariffs from before. They depend on those, or we depend on those items. We have to buy them, and then China will give us the tariff on top of the normal price. So the tariff is basically given to the customer.
I was the only president ever. China was paying us hundreds of billions of dollars, and so were other countries. And, you know, if she doesn't like them, they should have gone out and they should have immediately cut the tariffs. But those tariffs are there 3.5 years now under their administration. We are going to take in billions of dollars, hundreds of billions of dollars. I had no inflation, virtually no inflation. They had the highest inflation.
So how does he come up with no inflation? I have to look that up, and maybe I will put in a little marker in the top left or something what the inflation was. But I don't buy it that there was no inflation. Everybody had 2 to 3% at least, and then it got really worse during COVID. I paid like double the amount of costs for heating and electricity, and my rent increased, and everything was more expensive. So meat and produce, everything got more expensive. So I don't believe that's true.
Perhaps in the history of our country, because I've never seen a worse period of time. People can't go out and buy cereal or bacon or eggs or anything else. The people of our country are absolutely dying with what they've done. They've destroyed the economy. And all you have to do is look at a poll. The polls say 80 and 85 and even 90% that the Trump economy was great, that their economy was terrible.
Vice President Harris, I do want to ask for your response, and you heard what the president said there, because the Biden administration did keep a number of the Trump tariffs in place. So how do you respond?
Well, let's be clear that the Trump administration resulted in a trade deficit, one of the highest we've ever seen in the history of America. He invited trade wars. You want to talk about his deal with China? What he ended up doing is, under Donald Trump's presidency, he ended up selling American chips to China to help them improve and modernize their military, basically sold us out, when a policy about China should be in making sure the United States of America wins the competition for the 21st century, which means focusing on the details of what that requires, focusing on relationships with our allies, focusing on investing in American-based technology so that we win the race on AI, on quantum computing, focusing on what we need to do to support America's workforce so that we don't end up having on the short end of the stick in terms of workers' rights. But what Donald Trump did, let's talk about this, with COVID, is he actually thanked President Xi for what he did during COVID. Look at his tweet. "Thank you, President Xi," exclamation point, when we know that Xi was responsible for lacking and not giving us transparency about the origins of COVID.
President Trump, I'll let you respond.
First of all,
But she didn't answer the question, right? I have to know to go back and see what it was. So she didn't answer the question. She raised a lot of good points, but again, she's talking about Trump and his COVID and so on. But she didn't say, for example, which tariffs were kept and why, and which were not kept. So I would have liked that information. So especially why they kept some of the tariffs.
Well, they bought their chips from Taiwan. We hardly make chips anymore because of philosophies like they have and policies like they have.
Is he debunking it? Now the question is, who's telling the truth, who's fact-checking it? And in general, I'm a little worried, and it's not about the debate, it's about in general, why can they say untruthful things and there is no consequence, right? And people believe this person or that person. It's like the whole internet thing, right? So there's a influencer that you really like, so you're prone to believe more in what he says, even though it might not always be correct. So let's see.
I don't say her because she has no policy. Everything that she believed 3 years ago and 4 years ago is out the window. She's going to my philosophy now. In fact, I was going to send her a MAGA hat. She's gone to my philosophy. But if she ever got elected, she'd change it. And it will be the end of our country. She's a Marxist. Everybody knows she's a Marxist. Her father.
So what I don't like about this comment is it's too drastic. So the same way he's raising superlative words for his own doings, he's now going to the very extreme that everything goes down and crashes and America will probably be in anarchy and burn or something when Kamala Harris is elected. So that's really unfair because either one of them cannot predict the future. And I don't think under any of those two rules it will completely crash or go down, because even if you're a president, you don't have that much power as it's believed by the public eye, I think. So there's a lot of mechanisms in place to make a new law, to make new rules that are always challenged by the opposing side. And as it was in 2016 and so on, this was almost 50-50. So it was a very slim chance that it goes through sometimes, or it was like a 50-50. So a few votes would decide a certain mechanistic part of the political lawmaking, right? So all I'm saying is that it's not that easy, and you cannot say, I wouldn't cause panic and basically kind of lie about that there will be a panic, there will be devastation. I think she would be better from my point of view right now, but I don't think either one of the candidates will cause the nation to collapse. There might be decisions like on a political level with the allies or with meeting with other nations where Trump might be in the disadvantage because he's favoring the wrong people most of the time based on the past. But I don't know. Inside the country, there should be a flourishing economy for either one candidate if they provide the right tools and mechanisms and money to establish American jobs, American products that can replace cheap products from somewhere else.
There's a Marxist professor in economics, and he taught her well. But when you look at what she's done to our country, and when you look at these millions and millions of people that are pouring into our country monthly, where it's, I believe, 21 million people, not...
I believe 21 million people monthly. So is there a number that he read? Is it reported? What's the report? I would like to know sources of sorts where this is coming from. I don't think there can be 21 million people in 1 month. That's crazy, man. It's really crazy.
The 15 that people say, and I think it's a lot higher than the 21. That's bigger than New York State pouring in. And just look at what they're doing to our country. They're criminals. Many of these people coming in are criminals. And that's bad for our economy, too. You know, you mentioned before, we'll talk about immigration later. Well, bad immigration is the worst thing that can happen to our economy. They have, and she has, destroyed our country with policy that's insane. Almost policy that you'd say they have to hate our country.
President Trump, thank you. Lindsay?
I want to turn to the issue of abortion. President Trump, you've often touted that you were...
I don't like that switch, to be honest, because it was very offensive towards Harris. And what policies were people made to hate America? And I don't know. It's a little confusing to me. And I understand that a debate has to be short and moderated and everything, but I would have liked to hear her side on that, because, again, proof is missing, sources are missing, there are claims, and I don't think it is that drastic as he describes it. And I don't think it has been worse during the last couple of years compared to, for example, before Trump, right?
Able to kill Roe v. Wade.
2016.
Last year, you said that you were proud to be the most pro-life president in American history. Then last month, you said that your administration would be great for women and their reproductive rights. In your home state of Florida, you surprised many with regard to your 6-week abortion ban because you initially had said that it was too short. And you said, quote, I'm going to be voting that we need more than 6 weeks. But then the very next day, you reversed course and said you would vote to support the 6-week ban. Vice President Harris says that women shouldn't trust you on the issue of abortion because you've changed your position so many times. Therefore, why should they trust you?
Well, the reason I'm doing that vote is because the plan is, as you know, the vote is, they have abortion in the 9th month. They even have, and you can look at the governor.
I don't think that's true. He's claiming that falsehood. I have heard a couple of talks of him. Why is he saying that? That doesn't make any sense. That is against every human right. And that's not true. That's not true.
Of West Virginia, the previous governor of West Virginia, not the current governor, is doing an excellent job, but the governor before, he said the baby will be born and we will decide what to do with the baby. In other words, we'll execute the baby. And that's why I did that.
It's crazy that he's coming through, that he's not fact-checked. Let's see what happens. But it's just mind-blowing. It's just, I cannot say, I don't have words for that because this is super crazy.
Because that
this is like demonic, even if that would be true, but it's not true.
Dominates because they're radical. The Democrats are radical in that. And her vice presidential pick, which I think was a horrible pick, by the way, for our country, because he is really out of it. But her vice presidential pick says abortion in the 9th month is absolutely fine. He also says execution after birth. It's execution, no longer abortion, because the baby is born.
What I'm wondering is he's sticking to the same old words, and he was corrected so many times. I don't know why his team is not correcting him on that, or if he just ignores the advice. If he might have a point there, he should be prepared better in ways that it's more believable. I will probably put in some report or some reference in the top left, but this cannot be true, and it's not true. I think it was debunked by a couple of news channels and everything, but the problem is that in the US news system, there's different claims for different things, and they don't really are exactly opposite to each other, but one news channel will provide information that is washing down the information, playing down the thing, and the other one will say, yeah, this is exactly like Mr. Trump says, and many people will not comment on that because I don't think anybody will stick their foot into that hot water. It will boil the toe off because this is a drastic, inhumane thing that should never happen, and I don't think it has happened. And if it ever happened, it was a crime. It was not because of a law.
Is okay, and that's not okay with me, hence the vote. But what I did is something for 52 years they've been trying to get Roe v. Wade into the states. And through the genius and heart and strength of 6 Supreme Court justices, we were able to do that. Now, I believe in the exceptions for rape, incest, and life of the mother. I believe strongly in it. Ronald Reagan did also.
Is he not talking about the general abortion? Or is it about this 9 months abortion? This is really crazy, man. I mean, abortion should always be allowed, in my opinion, but this is another issue because sometimes it's financially or health-wise, or it was a rape. I see people who are suffering from the consequences if they couldn't do the abortion. But on the other hand, abortion is a very tough call, and it's never easy. And it should never be taken lightly. But in some cases, it makes sense, and there should be support for that.
So 85% of Republicans do. Exceptions, very important. But we were able to get it, and now states are voting on it. And for the first time, you're going to see, look, this is an issue that's torn our country apart for 52 years. Every legal scholar, every Democrat, every Republican, liberal, conservative, they all wanted this issue to be brought back to the states where the people could vote. And that's what happened. Now, Ohio, the vote was somewhat liberal. Kansas, the vote was somewhat liberal, much more liberal than people would have thought. But each individual state is voting. It's the vote of the people now. It's not tied up in the federal government. I did a great service in doing it. It took courage to do it. And the Supreme Court had great courage in doing it. And I give tremendous credit to those 6 justices.
There is no state in this country where it is legal to kill a baby after it's born. Madam Vice President, I want to get your response.
Good point, good point. Nice that she said it, because it's not the law.
To President Trump.
Well, as I said, you're going to hear a bunch of lies, and that's not actually a surprising fact. Let's understand how we got here. Donald Trump hand-selected 3 members of the United States Supreme Court with the intention that they would undo the protections of Roe v. Wade. And they did exactly as he intended. And now in over 20 states, there are Trump abortion bans, which make it criminal for a doctor or nurse to provide health care. In one state, it provides prison for life. Trump abortion bans that make no exception even for rape and incest, which understand what that means. A survivor of a crime of violation to their body does not have the right to make a decision about what happens to their body next. That is immoral. And one does not have to abandon their faith or deeply held beliefs to agree. The government, and Donald Trump certainly, should not be telling a woman what to do with her body. I have talked with women around our country. You want to talk about this is what people wanted?
She has a very strong point about that, and I was just thinking, he's always going the extreme way and says then everybody will do this or everything will be like that. But it's not like, if the law exists and you can have an abortion, that every mother who has suffered a crime against her body, against her psyche, will actually do that. There will not be all the people suddenly having an abortion. But there is a choice. There's a choice that they can make. And in some cases, it might be wise to do so. Or, as I said, it's a very hard call. And the whole family of this victim or that woman, or the woman itself, has to be very sure of the consequences, but it's a very strong emotional and otherwise exceptional choice to make. And not everybody will do that, even if the law exists.
Pregnant women who want to carry a pregnancy to term, suffering from a miscarriage, being denied care in an emergency room because the healthcare providers are afraid they might go to jail, and she's bleeding out in a car in the parking lot. She didn't want that. Her husband didn't want that. A 12 or 13-year-old survivor of incest being forced to carry a pregnancy to term. They don't want that. And I pledge to you, when Congress passes a bill to put back in place the protections of Roe v. Wade, as President of the United States, I will proudly sign it into law. But understand, if Donald Trump were to be reelected, he will sign a national abortion ban. Understand, in his Project 2025, there would be a national abortion, a monitor that would be monitoring your pregnancies, your miscarriages. I think the American people believe that certain freedoms, in particular the freedom to make decisions about one's own body, should not be made by the government.
Thank you, Vice President Harris.
Well, there she goes again. It's a lie.
So why is he allowed to interfere right now? Let's see what happens.
I'm not signing a ban, and there's no reason to sign a ban, because we've gotten what everybody wanted. Democrats, Republicans, and everybody else, and every legal scholar wanted it to be brought back into the states, and the states are voting. And it may take a little...
Even if that's true, he's not saying, I want to help those women to make a decision, and we want to support women in that way. He's just saying that everybody wanted it. So that makes me feel like he doesn't care about the exact term or consequences, and he doesn't have to relate or be empathic about it. But it's really strange that he's just looking at everybody wanted it, so we brought it to the States. It's really crazy.
Time. But for 52 years, this issue has torn our country apart.
Again, the record, it's the same comment, and he says he will not sign such an abortion law. Let's see what happens.
And they've wanted it back in the states, and I did something that nobody thought was possible. The states are now voting. What she says is an absolute lie. And as far as the abortion ban, no, I'm not in favor of abortion ban, but it doesn't matter because this issue has now been taken over by the states.
Would you veto a national abortion ban if it came
Well,
to
I
your
won't
desk?
have to because, again, two things. Number one, she said she'll go back to Congress. She'll never get the vote. It's impossible for her to get the vote, especially now with the 50-50 and essentially 50-50 in both Senate and the House. She's not going to get the vote. She can't get the vote. She won't even come close to it. So it's just talk. You know,
This is the issue that I mentioned before, that this 50-50 situation makes it really difficult to pass laws. But on the other hand, he's saying she's lying, but I don't know. It's weird. What is she lying about? What is the exact point? Is it just the point that he will not have? And also, I don't know if he's knowledgeable of the whole mechanistic pathway, how to pass a law. And if this election by the states has taken place, if there's another step after that, because it seems like from what he's talking about, that there will be no other steps taken because every state is doing their own ruling about it.
You know what it reminds me of when they said they're going to get student loans terminated, and it ended up being a total catastrophe. The student loans, and then her, I think probably her boss, if you call him a boss, he spends all his time on the beach. But look, her boss went out and said, we'll do it again. We'll do it a different way. And he went
Who is the boss? Biden?
out, got rejected again by the Supreme Court. So all these students got taunted with this whole thing about this whole idea. And how unfair that would have been, part of the reason they lost, to the millions and millions of people that had to pay off their student loans. They didn't get it for free. But they were saying it's the same way that they talked about that they talk about abortion.
But if I could just get a yes or no, because your running mate, J.D. Vance, has said that you would veto it if it did come to your desk.
Well, I didn't discuss it with J.D. In all fairness, J.D., and I don't mind if he has a certain view, but I think he was speaking for me, but I really didn't. Look, we don't have to discuss it because she'd never be able to get it, just like she couldn't get student loans. They couldn't get student loans. They didn't even come close to getting student loans. They taunted young people and a lot of other people that had loans. They can never get this approved. So it doesn't matter what she says about going to Congress. Well, wonderful. Let's go to Congress. Do it. But the fact is that for years they wanted to get it out of Congress and out of the federal government, and we did something that everybody said couldn't be done. And now you have a vote of the people on abortion.
Vice President Harris, I want to give you your time to respond, but I do want to ask, would you support any restrictions on a woman's right to an abortion?
I absolutely support reinstating the protections of Roe v. Wade, and as you rightly mentioned, nowhere in America is a woman carrying a pregnancy to term and asking for an abortion. That is not happening. It's insulting to the women of America. And understand what has been happening under Donald Trump's abortion bans. Couples who pray and dream of having a family are being denied IVF treatments. What is happening in our country? Working people, working women, who are working 1 or 2 jobs, who can barely afford childcare as it is, have to travel to another state to get on a plane sitting next to strangers to go and get the health care she needs, barely can afford to do it, and what you are putting her through is unconscionable. And
I like it how she looks at him and he never looks back at. I have to see if this goes through the discussion, but about her points, that's another side of it. IVF treatment, so to get like help with having a baby is also denied. So that's very an interesting point.
the people of America have not, the majority of Americans believe in a woman's right to make decisions about her own body, and that is why in every state where this issue has been on the ballot, in red and blue states both, the people of America have voted for freedom.
Vice President Harris,
Excuse me, I
thank
have
you.
to respond. Another lie. It's another lie.
So he is not being moderated to answer, and he's, for the second time in this discussion, raising a point. Maybe it's important. Let's see what he has to say.
I have been a leader on IVF, which is fertilization. The IVF, I have been a leader. In fact, when they got a very negative decision on IVF from the Alabama courts, I saw the people of Alabama and the legislature 2 days later voted it in. I've been a leader on it. They know that, and everybody else knows it. I have been a leader on fertilization, IVF. And the other thing, you should ask, will she allow abortion in the 8th month, 9th month, 7th month?
Why are we discussing this? This has already been debunked by 2 people, and this is not the question to ask, and it's super insulting, and it doesn't go anywhere. I think he's just pissed, or he wants to make her look weak. His whole IVF, I'm the best of the best, I did it in Alabama thing. Okay, you did it. I appreciate it, but it was also not part of the question, because if the whole debate is about the women's rights, parental control, and abortions are basically declined, this will also include IVF treatments.
Come on.
Okay, would you do that? Why don't you ask her that question?
Why don't you answer
That's
the
problem.
question? Would you
because
veto?
under Roe v.
Answer
Wade,
the question, would you veto?
you could do abortions in the 7th month, the 8th month, the 9th
That's
month,
not true.
and probably after birth. Just look at the former governor of Virginia. The governor of Virginia said, we put the baby aside and then we determine what we want to do with the baby.
President Trump, thank
Did he ever say that? The governor of Virginia?
you.
We're going to turn now to immigration and border security. We know it's an issue that's important to Republicans, Democrats, voters across the board in this country. Vice President Harris, you were tasked by President Biden with getting to the root causes of migration from Central America. We know that illegal border crossings reached a record high in the Biden administration. This past June, President Biden imposed tough new asylum restrictions. We know the numbers since then have dropped significantly. But my question to you tonight is, why did the administration wait until 6 months before the election to act? And would you have done anything differently from President Biden on this?
So I'm the only person on this stage who has prosecuted transnational criminal organizations for the trafficking of guns, drugs, and human beings. And let me say that the United States Congress, including some of the most conservative members of the United States Senate, came up with a border security bill which I supported. And that bill would have put 1,500 more border agents on the border to help those folks who are working there right now.
I think she's about to say that he basically made it that this couldn't be passed. So he basically worked against that bill, and that's true.
Overtime, trying to do their job. It would have allowed us to stem the flow of fentanyl coming into the United States. I know there are so many families watching tonight who have been personally affected by the surge of fentanyl in our country. That bill would have put more resources to allow us to prosecute transnational criminal organizations for trafficking in guns, drugs, and human beings. But you know what happened to that bill? Donald Trump got on the phone, called up some folks in Congress, and said, kill the bill. And you know why? Because he'd prefer to run on a problem instead of fixing a problem. And understand, this comes at a time where the people of our country actually need a leader who engages in solutions, who actually addresses the problems at hand. But what we have in the former president is someone who would prefer to run on a problem instead of fixing a problem. And I'll tell you something, he's going to talk about immigration a lot tonight, even when it's not the subject that is being raised. And I'm going to actually do something really unusual, and I'm going to invite you to attend one of Donald Trump's rallies, because it's a really interesting thing to watch. You will see during the course of his rallies, he talks about fictional characters like Hannibal Lecter. He will talk about windmills cause cancer. And what you will also notice is that people start leaving his rallies early out of exhaustion and boredom. And I will tell you, the one thing you will not hear him talk about is you. You will not hear him talk about your needs, your dreams, and your desires. And I'll tell you, I believe you deserve a president who actually puts you first, and I pledge to you that I will.
Vice President Harris, thank you. President Trump, on that point, I want to get your response.
Well, I would like to respond.
Let me just ask, though, why did you try to kill that bill, and successfully so? That would have put thousands of additional agents and officers on the border.
First, let me respond as to the rallies. She said people start leaving.
The rallies are irrelevant. That was just a provoking point. And it's kind of true, I think. Some people have shown that people are leaving, or that there are not so many people in the crowds. I don't know what's actually true, but I really don't care, because in the end of the day, the rallies are one tool, and we have seen that also polling is one tool. But what happens in the end, in November, is the actual vote, and that's the important thing that happens. And now she's pulling his ego, and now he will comment on the crowd size and everything. Let's see.
People don't go to her rallies. There's no reason to go. And the people that do go, she's bussing them in and paying them to be there. And
it's another false claim, paying people to be there. I don't know why people can say something like that on public television, and it's obviously a lie. And she's also not that rich, or I don't know. Even if she was rich, or even if the party would do that, that would be a crime, right? But anyhow, even if it's not a crime, it's so weird to mention that if you discuss at that level, there are other problems to talk about.
Then showing them in a different light. So she can't talk about that. People don't leave my rallies. We have the biggest rallies, the most incredible rallies in the history of politics. That's because people want to take their country back. Our country is being lost. We're a failing nation.
I think some of his voters or sympathizers are lost because they want to believe in him. They want to believe that he makes everything better, because for some reason they don't trust in the democratic system as much as they used to do, or they don't see that there's change happening. But this is also true for every nation. So elections become more and more drastic in different directions because the traditional parties or the traditional fractions, they don't provide the change that people want. But there's also a lot of challenges along the way, like the economic developments and other things on a global stage that are affecting every nation. Even though you can say America is far away from other nations, they still on an economic level are also affected by things that happen in other countries.
And it happened 3.5 years ago. And what's going on here, you're going to end up in World War III, just to go into another subject. What they have done to our country by allowing these millions and millions of people to come into our country, and look at what's happening to the towns all over the United States. And a lot of towns don't want to talk. It's not going to be Aurora or Springfield. A lot of towns don't want to talk about it because they're so embarrassed by it. In Springfield, they're eating the dogs, the people that came in. They're eating the cats. They're eating the pets of the people.
How did we get to here? I will watch this back again and see how did we end up here. And I don't think that's true. It's crazy, man.
That live there. And this is what's happening in our country. And it's a shame. As far as rallies are concerned,
especially not in the where he describes it, that everybody's eating the cats. Maybe there was one criminal who did it. Maybe he was an immigrant. Maybe he was just a man of color. Or maybe he was a white American. Who knows? If somebody did that, that doesn't mean everybody of that same profile or everybody of a certain group did that, you know? So he's exacerbating.
As far as the reason they go is they like what I say. They want to bring our country back. They want to make America great again. It's a very simple phrase, make America great again. She's destroying this country, and if she becomes president, this country doesn't have a chance of success. Not only success, we'll end up being Venezuela on steroids.
I just want to clarify here. You bring up Springfield, Ohio, and ABC News did reach out to the city manager there. He told us there have been no credible reports of specific claims of pets being harmed, injured, or abused by individuals within the immigrant community.
Well, I've seen people on television.
Let me just say here, this is the
people on television say my dog was taken and used for food. So maybe he said that, and maybe that's a good thing to say for a city manager.
I'm not taking this from
but
television.
The people
I'm
on
taking it from
television
the city
saying
manager.
their dog was eaten by the people.
So it's not a trustworthy source. If it ever happened, it can be anything, and it's crazy, man. Maybe it was a documentary about something that happened, but I don't believe him in that case.
Well, that went there.
Again, the Springfield city manager says there's no evidence of that. Vice President.
And there's the evidence publicly known, so that's the point.
Harris, I'll let you respond to the rest of what you've heard.
You talk about extreme. You know, this is, I think, one of the reasons why in this election I actually have the endorsement of 200 Republicans who have formally worked with President Bush, Mitt Romney, and John McCain, including the endorsement of former Vice President Dick Cheney and Congress member Liz Cheney. And if you want to really know the inside track on who the former president is, if he didn't make it clear already, just ask people who have worked with him. His former chief of staff of 4-star.
That's true. That's true. There's many people who have left not only the Trump administration, but also his field of voters, and they publicly denounce him right now. And that's really crazy. I mean, everybody who is in a higher position has some people doing that, but I think the number of people being reported and also their names in high ranks, and everybody knows them from the last couple of years, that's something to be concerned about, in my opinion. But if that 200 people or whatever, even if they have big names and even if they switch sides, affect the outcome of the vote, I don't know. But it's a sign, in my opinion.
General has said he has contempt for the Constitution of the United States. His former national security advisor has said he is dangerous and unfit. His former Secretary of Defense has said the nation, the Republic, would never survive another Trump term. And when we listen to this kind of rhetoric, when the issues that affect the American people are not being addressed, I think the choice is clear in this election.
President Trump, I'll give you a quick minute to respond here.
Thank you, because when I hear that, see, I'm a different kind of a person. I fired most of those people. Not so graciously. They did bad things or a bad job. I fired them.
Were they all fired? I think there was also his press secretary or somebody. Maybe he replaced her in the very end, but I believe there are also people who he didn't fire. And I heard also some comments from Mike Pence and some former soldiers. So it's a big crowd who debunks him right now.
Never fired.
Or who he leaves his side.
One person. They didn't fire anybody having to do with Afghanistan and the Taliban and the 13 people who's were just killed, viciously and violently killed. And I got to know the parents and the family. They didn't fire. They should have fired all those generals, all those top people, because that was one of the most incompetently handled situations anybody has ever seen. So when somebody does a bad job, I fire him. And you take a guy like Esper. He was no good. I fired him. So he writes a book. Another one writes a book. Because with me, they can write books. With nobody else can they. But they have done such a poor job, and they never fire anybody. Look at the economy. Look at the inflation. They didn't fire any of their economists. They have the same people. That's a good way not to have books written about you. But just to finish, I got more votes than any Republican in history by far. In fact, I got more votes than any president, sitting president, in history by far.
More votes, really?
Let me continue on immigration. It was what you wanted to talk about earlier, so let's get back to your deportation proposal.
I will take a quick break here. This will probably be like 4 parts or something like that until we finish the whole debate, and there will be some final words. I hope you enjoyed. I hope my views don't really oppose yours that much, and if there's something to discuss, you can put them down in the comments. You can also ask me questions. In the future, I will also post videos about my America experience, how to become acquainted with the system in America, how to apply for university and everything. And if you're interested in that, you can ask me questions about it. You can also ask me questions about Europe, especially about Germany and the systems there and the people. It can be traditional things. If you have any questions, write them down in the comments. And this is what I plan to do with this channel a little bit, is to give information from my experiences. So I'm not a psychologist, and I'm also not a counselor or specialist of any kind, but I am somebody who has been through the systems and who has done a couple of things, who has some experiences, and I want to share those with you. And maybe also update them, because some of the things have changed during COVID or afterwards, and we will discuss the changes and maybe review some videos. And if you're interested in that, let me know, because your feedback is important so that I know what content I should provide you with. But for now, have a good night or a good day, and maybe see you in the next part of this discussion or another video. Yo, go see fly.